What is going on, Cosmic Crew? Welcome to the channel today. We have a lot of Marvel news to go over because insider Alex Perez from the CosmicCircus.com recently answered a lot of questions on his Discord server about things he knows about Avengers Doomsday. In this, he talked about Kang and Doom and how Marvel kind of changed their plans for Doom, but not really. He also talks in a lot of detail about a big X-Men scene or a big X-Men plot point in Avengers Doomsday, and even talks about the future of the X-Men after Avengers Doomsday. So a lot to break down today. And if you're new and you love Marvel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest Marvel news. So we'll start off with what he started off with. He was asked a question about the Kangs, and specifically the original plan that Marvel Studios had for the Kangs. So he said, the question says, you once said something about a multiversal loop regarding the Kangs that was going to be a thing. Will that be addressed, or will it be made so that it never involved the Kangs in the first place, or just made into something else entirely? And that's a good question. What this person is referring to is an earlier report, a handful of months ago, from Alex Perez. He stated that the original plan Marvel Studios had for Kangs and the Avengers and everything, and for Kang Dynasty, was that basically the multiverse was stuck in a loop where you have the big multiversal war, then you basically have the almost complete destruction of the multiverse, and then somebody wins, they seclude their universe, and they try to just maintain it the best they can, cut off the branch timelines, but ultimately something happens and eventually branch timelines go out, variants arrive, a bunch of universes start colliding again, there's a big multiversal war once again, then there's a winner, and then repeat, right? So that's the loop. Multiversal war, one timeline wins, it breaks out again, incursions, multiversal war again. That could be with Kang, that could be with Doom. But Alex says, in reply to this, Doom will basically take the spot of the Conqueror's motivation from Quantum Mania and manifest them. So he'll be pissed about people messing with the timelines and causing incursions. So essentially, it's the same thing. And I don't think you could really get away from that, because I think essentially the same thing's going to happen again. We're going to go into Avengers Secret Wars with Doom winning, with only Battleworld existing. So essentially one universe exists. From there, they'll defeat him, and if it's like the comics, they'll use Franklin, and they'll use Reed, and maybe some other people, and they'll try to start to restore the multiverse. So with the restoration of the multiverse, inevitably is going to come evil variants, people who want to take over the entire multiverse, and then incursions will happen once again. So I think we still will be stuck in that loop, unless the Avengers can figure out a way to end that loop. How do you think they could end that cycle? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. But it sounds like basically all the plans that Marvel had for Kang, they're just throwing Doom in there and taking out Kang. It sounds like they went, okay, Kang is not necessarily as big as we want him to be. People don't really know Kang. The story's good. Let's continue with the story, but let's just throw in Dr. Doom and let's make him Robert Downey Jr. That way people will come back to the movie theaters. I mean, it's marketing, right? And it's definitely a move. I am excited for him to return, but that was definitely a move. So let me know what you think about that, them just simply replacing him. I do still like that story of the loop. I think the loop should continue because ultimately I think we should do the multiverse saga again in a bigger and better way. This saga could have been done better. I'm excited to see how it ends though. So the next thing he talks about is the mutants, and this one specifically right here is a pretty big one. He was asked a question that says, what will Magneto's journey be through Doomsday and potentially Secret Wars? As someone who isn't usually portrayed as a hero, his views on the multiversal incursions could potentially be very complex, and I agree with that. But Alex replies with, when we see Magneto again in Doomsday, he finally has the mutant utopia he had always dreamed of. When it's threatened, you know he'll throw hands to protect it. So I love this. I love that Magneto finally has the mutant utopia. What will that be? Well, for starters, we've heard and we've kind of seen, not really too much, but Marvel Studios filming at Windsor Castle, which I think could be the utopia, because Unbox PhD, who is the person who has been taking all the drone footage of the set of Avengers Doomsday and been giving a lot of information, according to them, we have seen the X Mansion in some of the leaked photos that they have shared. Most of it seems to be CGI, which is why I don't think it's going to be at Windsor Castle. Maybe they're filming all of the inside scenes at Windsor Castle, but I would like to think that Magneto's utopia is actually something pretty great. It's not like you know, just like out in the forest and like, you know, they got some tents and stuff like that. I'd like to think that it's just like a really, really nice place, because in the past, Alex Perez also reported that the timeline or the universe that this X-Men group is basically going to be after Days of Future Past. And those events that happened in Days of Future Past kind of changed pretty much what we know about the history of the X-Men universe, which makes sense because going back in time, changing the past, etc. So perhaps something happened in this universe, or maybe even Days of Future Past, that led to people actually kind of agreeing with Magneto, and maybe like the president at that time agreed to kind of give them solace, like kind of agreed to leave them alone, give them a piece of land where the mutants can be happy together and not be tortured by the humans, essentially, or, you know, hunted down. And it seems like Magneto finally got his just ideal utopia, like Alex said. But now I'm wondering if that is secluded from the X Mansion. Kind of seems like it is. Kind of seems like Professor X has the X Mansion, he has his school, but at the same time, Magneto's not necessarily like fighting against him. He's kind of just a safe haven where mutants can go throughout any part in the world. They could go and be at this utopia. I really like both of this, but he does say he's ready to throw hands if someone threatens it, which obviously, yes, he should be. And I wonder if Professor X and the X-Men go to Magneto after Doom attacks them, and that's how Magneto and some other X-Men get involved in this big multiversal fight. I really like this idea because I think this means that a lot more X-Men could appear than have just been announced. Now, obviously, we're expecting more X-Men to appear than have just been announced, but I think this could be really cool. Now, the next part is the future of the X-Men after Avengers Doomsday, which I'm really excited for, and we'll get to that. But first, a big thank you to Factor for sponsoring this video. I think most of you know that I use Factor and I love Factor because they make eating healthy quick and easy, but most importantly, the food is delicious. And now they've added even more options, like different seafood options and different Asian cuisines, and they all taste just absolutely fantastic. Factor is just a complete win. Instead of spending hours a week meal prepping, Factor arrives fresh and ready to eat, perfect for any active lifestyle. And if you're busy like me, Factor is a game changer. They take the time out of prepping and make it easy to eat healthy. With 45 weekly menu options, you can pick gourmet meals that fit your goals. Choose from Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, and more. All tasting great. I personally love Italian, and their different pasta options are fantastic. Factor powers your day with satisfying breakfasts, on-the-go lunches, premium dinners, and guilt-free snacks and desserts. They even have wellness shots as well. Make eating healthy easy with Factor. To get started, go to factormeals.com/CosmicWonder50 off and use code CosmicWonder50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code CosmicWonder50 off at factormeals.com/CosmicWonder50 off for 50% off plus free shipping. Now, what I was saying, I do want to mention that Alex Perez did say that in an Avengers versus X-Men scene, the one that we've been hearing about for a while that we're going to get in Avengers Doomsday, he was asked if any of the X-Men or Avengers will die in this fight. He does say he does not think any of them will be killed or die in the battle against each other, the Avengers versus the X-Men, but he says that some of the consequences of the fight could lead to deaths later on in the movie. But then we go further into the Cyclops and Summers family, because we've heard recently that they're going to be the focus of the mutant saga moving forward. When we get the New Mutants, not the actual New Mutants team, but just new to the MCU, they're going to focus on the Summers family. So Scott Summers and also obviously Jean Grey. Somebody asked about Cable, since they were going to be focusing, since Marvel's going to be focusing on Cyclops and the Summers family. They asked about Cable. Alex said they're all fair game, but we're starting out in the very early days with the X-Men roster they've got planned. And then when asked about the X-Men roster that they have plans and about the Cyclops and Summers family rumors, Alex said this: Cyclops and Jean Grey as co-leaders of the team. That's what it's going to be when we get the mutants. I've heard other names like Angel, Beast, Gambit, Rogue, and Nightcrawler could be a part of it. So essentially X-Men First Class, which is what I think they should start with, right? Start us off with the first X-Men team, start us off with Professor X and Magneto kind of being on the same team as well. But then obviously, like, they kind of start to clash about how they view the world, how they view humans, and specifically how the humans view them, because Marvel's already confirmed kind of Magneto's view and kind of just X-Men versus humanity. That is going to be a big story in the next well, just in general with the mutants when they're in the MCU. They've confirmed that. So starting off also with the first X-Men team as the first X-Men movie in the MCU just makes sense to me. And I'm okay that it won't have like such a giant roster, because things need to be established, like Professor Xavier's school for gifted youngsters. That needs to be established. That'll bring in new mutants. That'll bring in new X-Men members as they graduate and, if they're chosen to be a part of the team. And then that also leads probably to some of them going and siding with Magneto. These are stories that need to be built up in the right way. And somebody once commented in a live stream that I totally agreed with. The mutants are a team. They shouldn't be built up one at a time. So you do have to build them up like groups, group by group by group, right? And you do that with the X-Men movies. And they could have other movies as well. You could do an actual New Mutants. They could do a Brotherhood movie, which I do hope they do. But ultimately, they're going to come together, I believe, to fight villains like Apocalypse and Mr. Sinister, which we've been hearing from insiders like Alex Perez and Daniel RPK, etc., that those are going to be pretty much the main villains they focus on immediately when we get to the mutant saga. So a lot of big things happening here. I'm loving what we're hearing about Avengers Doomsday so far. I'm very curious as how they're going to kind of have Professor Xavier's part and Magneto's part in Avengers Doomsday, how they have them come together. I'm pretty sure it's after the fight, but I'd love to know your thoughts on how you think they're going to actually come together to go to the 616 universe, because we know that's going to happen. And also at the same time, I'm really excited for the future of the mutants in the MCU. But let me know how excited you are in the comments down below. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you enjoyed it. You can also find us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.